Hello and welcome back to another episode of Inside the Asperger Studios. My next guest is an autism advocate with quite the message. So sit back, relax, and grab your favorite beverage, and let's learn more about him. See you there.
I wanna believe in the truth, but only see what I'm shown. Got the freedom to choose, but can't decide on my own. Follow what the group is thinking, bottle up my intuition till it's
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Inside the Asperger Studios. Today I'm joined with David Gunter. Welcome to the show, David.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
I'll ask you the question everyone hates me to ask. Tell me about yourself.
Fair enough. I am late 50s. Did not even suspect that I might be autistic until my late 40s. And when it first crossed my mind, I rejected the idea immediately because I bought into that Hollywood stereotype of what autism is and how autistic people behave. I had seen Rain Man. That made me an expert on autism. Rain Man is autistic. I am not Rain Man. Therefore, I am not autistic. Done. So it was not until I was going to a therapist, trying to work on what I thought was depression. I've been battling autistic burnout at least since junior high school, maybe before that. And I had been calling it depression because I didn't know I was autistic and didn't know it was autistic burnout. So I had been in and out of therapy for depression for my entire adult life, been on just about every antidepressant medication there is. Went back to another therapist for another round of treatment for my what I thought was depression. And just through sheer chance, he had done some work with autistic children during his training. And he gently brought up, well, one other thing that might explain a lot of what you're talking about is autism. And again, rejected that idea completely. Slightly insulted. I'm not one of those people. And it took me a year and a half to really come around and learn about what autism is and who I am, and to begin to reconcile the fact that, oh, okay, yeah, this is who I am. So it's been a long journey for me to get to the point where I can say I am autistic out loud, unapologetically. And I have held a lot of jobs, and I generally didn't talk about my autism at work, didn't disclose it for a variety of reasons. Got into a situation where it had to happen, so I did. And once I had said that out loud at work, I decided I may as well take charge of it. I may as well be the one telling this story. So I've been trying to get louder and louder on LinkedIn, on Substack, on my own site, on anywhere that will any podcast foolish enough to book me. I love to get out there and try to reach out to people and say, look, I felt isolated and broken and wrong for most of my life, 40 years of my life, and beat myself up because I couldn't be like everybody else. And while it's true, I'm not like everybody else, that's not a bad thing. And so I'm just trying to, if I can spare somebody 5 minutes of that isolation and depression and yes, I came close to ending my life once or twice. If I can reach out to anybody who's in that world and say you are not alone, then that's what I'm going to do. So as an autistic person, I tend to information dump very long answers to very simple questions. I'm not even sure I answered your question, so
So let's
uh,
see.
go
Put it
ahead.
in a nutshell. I mean, it's funny that you bring it up that you kind of rejected it because early on when we fought, when we came to the conclusion from family members who were psychiatrists and therapists. One was a family lawyer. Even my PCP all told my parents, "Oh, Reed's got the early stages of high functioning autism, as it was called back then." And my mom's like,
Right.
"Maybe you should apply for SSI." And I'm like, "Why? I don't want to be labeled."
Yeah.
And then my mom's like, "But you gotta understand, it will help you it will help us because that money is going to be helping us with everything else while you're trying to find work.
Right.
And what a lot of people sit there and fight about is, I don't want to be labeled as somebody who's disabled. I'm not a disability. A lot of people don't realize it is a disability. It's mental disability. And we struggle with that.
Yeah.
And it's just people only see one side of us when we're outside.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
How do you deal with that? I mean, how do you mask number one? Number two, would you rather stand out or would you rather blend in?
Growing up, um, I knew that I was different from day one of kindergarten, right? My first time around a group of children my own age that I didn't know in a place I wasn't familiar with, supervised by adults I didn't know, did not go well. I have always known that I was different. And, as I mentioned, I was raised different is wrong, different is bad. And especially junior high school and high school, being different is about the worst thing you could possibly be.
Yeah.
And to a lot of people, I'm not saying that's true. I'm saying that's the perception. Oh yeah, I learned all the masking tricks. I worked really hard, to make myself invisible, because if nobody notices you, then they won't notice that you're different. And then B, underneath the cloak of invisibility, putting on my camouflage, so if somebody did get a peek underneath the cloak of invisibility, I'd look like everybody else. We're mixing our metaphors there, but but it's all right. So yeah, I masked and masked and masked and masked, and it's masks are heavy.
Yes. I
Keeping
mean,
that mask up will just drain the life out of you.
that's why I
And
have
I
talked with
have
people and said,
go ahead.
I don't get the fact that why you want a mask. You come home exhausted.
Right,
You go into your room of inclusion in the
right,
dark just to deregulate. Why fight that
yeah,
when you could just say, hey, I am who I am.
right,
Not my fault. You have to change this and
right.
that
Not
to,
my fault. You can't communicate clearly. Come on.
no.
Yes.
I mean, as the term and as the terminology goes, we're different, not less.
Yeah, yeah,
And people don't see that. All they
no,
see is, oh, I see this different person.
right,
I have to accommodate for him.
right,
Like going to a job interview and you think to yourself, do I tell them I'm autistic or do I keep it to myself? And
right,
then eventually have to tell them later during the job and then have to worry about if I'm going to lose the job.
yeah,
I have a friend who's in California who for the longest time was applying for work and kept putting down he's autistic and he would never get interviews. And then I don't know if it's law out there or what, but they're asking in the application, are you getting SSI? Which I think is almost illegal.
feels borderline illegal. Yes.
But I mean, the thing is, why should we struggle to hide who we are?
I agree. Well, I agree completely.
Are the majority. I guarantee you there are more and more people coming out every day
Mhm,
who are realizing that their little differences, they call it, are
mhm.
actually symbols and symbols are traits of autism.
Yeah,
Don't hide who you are. It should be the other way around. Every
absolutely.
company needs to be accepting of of those of us who are different.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's been a big shift in my mindset the past 3 4 years of I'm done. I'm not going to pretend to be like everybody else because I'm not. And pretending doesn't do me any good. So, you know, it's what's in it for me. And I agree with you. People see autism as one thing. When I'm speaking, one of the statistics I like to throw out, there are, roughly, depending on which article you read, 25-ish% of autistic people are either nonverbal or minimally verbal with a functional vocabulary of 50 words or less. But there is another autistic trait, hyperlexia, that kid who started reading early and never stopped and always had a book in his hand and had the huge vocabulary compared to all his peers. Hi, that was me. About 14% of autistic children are hyperlexic. So if you say, oh, he's autism equals inability to process language, no, it does not. And one thing that I try to slip quietly into the conversation is, oh, by the way, those hyperlexic kids, 85% of them are autistic. So if you're sitting there nodding along, going, "Oh yes, that was me. I read early." Yeah, well, guess what? So yes, the perception people have of autism is completely skewed.
I mean, the interesting thing is, I mean, one of the things I want to ask you is, before you found out you're autistic, did you kind of feel like you're on the outside looking in, and then
Oh yes,
once you got that diagnosis, you're like, oh my God, you're on the inside looking out now because you're seeing all these traits,
yeah,
and you're,
absolutely,
how does that
absolutely.
make you feel? Was that like a valid, was that like a
It,
aha moment for you when your doctor said you got
uh,
autism?
it it wasn't aha moment like a light switch flipped and suddenly my entire life made sense.
Mhm.
But it was, now I could look back at 12-year-old me and say, oh, of course he didn't understand what was going on in that situation. He was autistic. He took the language literally and was doing one thing and everybody else was doing something else. So it opened the door for me to go back and reevaluate a lot of things in my life and things that I had been beating myself up for. Why couldn't you do that? Everybody else did that. Why couldn't you do that? And that voice got turned down dramatically, and I was able to start looking back and go, okay, yeah, kid, I wish I had a time machine and I could go back 40 years and sit down and buy you a Coke and talk you through it, because you're dealing with stuff you cannot possibly understand right now. And 30 minutes with you, 30 minutes with that 15-year-old version of me would have completely changed the trajectory of my life. So again, if I can have that 30 minutes with somebody today, I'm going to do it.
What are you doing now with your life?
The boring answer is I do some one-on-one consulting. I do some speaking to groups. I do some small groups online. I'm doing some writing. Those are the boring physical. What are you doing? The big picture, what am I doing, is I have a picture of myself when I was 15, just over here on the wall where you can't see it. And I look at that kid and I think, what did that kid need to hear? What should somebody have told that kid?
Mhm.
And I try to communicate that to everybody who needs to hear it. And there are a lot of us out there who need to hear it. I don't claim to have it all figured out, but I've learned a thing or two, and anything that I can do to help people understand who they are, understand who they're not, and what it's okay that they're not who they're not. That's what I want to be when I grow up. Is that guy who helps people figure it out?
You had said something early on about you're helping people feel like they're not alone. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the essential of everything I
Oh,
am.
absolutely, absolutely.
I give props to every one of those of us who are advocating out there, because for every one of us, there's one out there who feels they're alone in this world. Either
Hmm.
their parents aren't accepting of it, or their friends aren't accepting, or they're struggling trying to find friends, and
Yeah,
they feel they're alone.
yeah,
The point we are making and trying to get across is you're not.
absolutely not.
Millions of us out there
Hmm.
are autistic, either high or low,
Right.
and we're all struggling. We all have our differences. I mean, as the saying goes, when you meet one person with autism, you meet one person with autism.
Yeah,
We each have our own traits. We each have our own disabilities and
yeah.
strengths. There are those who can say there are those who are double exceptional, but I think we're all double exceptional, because there are those that we're all good at one thing and we're all poor at another.
Yeah, exactly. Just the whole myth that there's some sort of normal, some average number that we're all drawn to. No, I don't think there is a normal. I think there's just too many traits and too much variation. And pick any two people, and they will be different in fundamental ways. So, if the example that I sometimes use is height. If you went out and measured people how tall they were, okay, that's an objective linear measurement. We can figure out what the average height is for this group and say who's above that average and who's below it. But when you're talking about how does your brain work, there's not a nice, objective, tidy 3-digit number that says, okay, here, you are this.
Yeah. There is no ideal height. There is no
Yeah.
ideal look.
And that, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I mean, one of my favorite things I wrote about in my book is I talk about it's okay to be normal.
Yeah.
And I talk about, and I go back in time and I go, I want to tell you about Ford and the Model T. And I say, I want you to imagine a world where everyone is all the same. It was like that with the Model T
Right.
until people realize they don't want to be have the same car as their neighbor or
Right.
their brother or their wife. They wanted different.
Yeah.
And then and Ford came out with colors and different models.
Right.
The same thing happened when we had COVID. Everyone was wearing the same PPP masks, and then people started creating custom masks and
Right.
this and I relate it back to us in the sense saying it's better to stand out than it is to blend in.
Yeah.
Because
Yes.
when we stand out, we make a difference. We're a voice.
Right.
When we blend in, no one can hear us.
Yeah.
No one sees us.
Yeah.
As you put it, we become invisible.
Right.
I'd
And
rather be
right.
that voice
Yeah.
than you're not alone.
Right. And it doesn't take a lot to be visible. I was at a meeting at work, and there's another woman there. She's autistic. I didn't know that at the time. So she was talking about something, da 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 da, and I'm autistic, so da 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 da, and didn't slow down, didn't look back, just said I am autistic, so, and it was like a magic trick. You can do that. You can just say I am autistic out loud and keep going with your thought. So she had a huge impact on me and on my being willing to stand up just by throwing those 4 words out in passing in a conversation. So I agree with you. We need to be visible, but there are lots of ways to be visible. You don't get intimidated by how am I going to be visible. Just say the words I am autistic out loud. Just there's 1,000 ways to do little things to reach out to somebody. And like you say, the connection within the community is so crucial. That's probably the thing that helped me most as I was trying to deal with who am I? Am I really autistic? What is autism? Was being able to sit down and talk online, chat, face-to-face conversations with strangers, not my best thing, but being able to communicate, interact with people who just said, yes, I am autistic, and realizing, wow, okay, that's what that looks like. Okay, yeah. So it doesn't take a lot to have a huge impact.
Found out you were autistic. What did that mean for you?
I, I had come and gone. I thought I was depressed because I was exhausted all the time and sad. So clearly that's depression. I have some level of tic disorder. So for a while, I thought I had Tourette's and maybe do. I don't know. I do not, it's very difficult for me in social situations, talking to strangers, walking into a room full of people I don't know. So clearly I've got a social phobia, social anxiety. I mean, for 40 years, I was looking at a lot of different options for what's wrong with me. And initially, I pushed back against autism for a lot of reasons, and one of them was, well, what does it matter? There's no treatment for it. There's no drug I can take to make me less autistic. Where's the value in having a name to put on it? And so that also discouraged me from getting answers. But it was some desperation, some hey, I'm going into this thing, whatever it is again, and I'm in danger of losing my job, and I'm sad, and I thought it was depression, but it wasn't. That sort of pushed me. Something's got to be different. And so I didn't want to hear the word autism. Tried really hard to prove to myself that I wasn't. But when the insurmountable evidence said, "Yeah, guess what? You are," um, I had to make my peace with it, and so I did. And so I'm not sure I 100% answered your question. Well, try that one again.
You found out you were autistic. How did
Yeah,
it change you?
it it gave me the ability to forgive myself, to stop beating myself up. I was the kid who, was didn't get the joke. I was the kid who, and I was, the freak. Trust me, lots of people in my life have been happy to apply the label freak to me or whatever.
That's
And being able to say no, that's that's not who I am. That's not who I was. And just being able to give myself some grace and some forgiveness and some understanding and stop hitting myself, beating myself up for things that aren't aren't things that anyone's fault, aren't a problem. They're just a difference.
that's funny you say that because I mean, all throughout high school, I thought I was different.
Mm-hmm.
I was picked on, I was made fun of, and I thought I tried to be something I wasn't back then. I tried to
Yep.
be, and it just made me feel like I wasn't my true self.
Yep.
And I didn't realize why I was doing what I was doing
Right.
till later on, until I was told, you're autistic. And then I learned about masking, and I'm like, oh shit.
Mm-hmm.
I was masking to play something I wasn't, just
Right.
to be liked. And I just thought, God, I hated myself back then.
Yeah.
I didn't
Mm-hmm.
have friends. Nobody really took my side. I was in special education throughout high school, and I was constantly getting into scrapes because I'd say something and I wouldn't understand why.
Right.
Until later on, and then we found out I was autistic. It was like this light bulb and this clarity, like you said, this clarity of, oh wow, this
Mm-hmm.
is why I was different back then.
Right.
And ever since then, I've made it a point to be my true self.
Right.
And every guest that comes on this show knows they don't have to mask when they
Yeah.
talk to me. You can
Right.
be who you want to be.
Right.
This is a safe spot.
Which is a gift.
Yeah. I really make my guests feel comfortable.
Yeah.
But I get you when you're talking about how you felt. I mean, I felt the same way.
Mm-hmm.
How did you deal with high school?
The short answer is badly. I like you say, I came home from high school exhausted from masking all day. Went downstairs to the basement, sat in front of the TV and watched whatever mindless thing was on the TV and ate whatever snack was in my hand and tried to just get as far away from everything as humanly possible. I dealt with it. I hated it. I hated every minute of it. I didn't deal with it. is the short answer. I tried to always be busy with something, always have somewhere to go. We had the 10, 15 minutes between classes, which is when other people would stop and talk and do whatever. But I always, big important thing, I have to go go do, so can't sit still, can't talk to anybody or make it clear that I don't have anybody to talk to. So I was masked up to the eyebrows in high school, and then came home and collapsed every night, and then in the morning put the mask right back on again and got exhausted again.
High school was traumatic as enough. Being a kid,
Right.
you throw in being somebody you don't know you're autistic,
Right.
and you don't understand, especially when you got to deal with things like, why am I feeling overstimulated? Why am I on the verge of a meltdown when I
Mm-hmm.
don't know what's going on?
Right.
And to the average person, they don't understand what a meltdown is.
No. 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 No.
My understanding of what I've heard people, I found the best explanation is imagine you're a parent and you send your kid off to school right out of the shower. You throw his clothes on, his shirt's inside out, he's wet, he's itchy, he gets on a loud bus. Now he's got noise, he's wet,
Right.
he's itchy. You
Right.
throw him in school with constant talking,
Right.
constant noise.
Mm-hmm.
By the time he gets home, he is
Mm-hmm.
exhausted.
Yes.
That's what a meltdown is. It's
Right.
you can't get away from that stimulation and
Right.
it just drives at you to the point where you break.
Right. I think that's a key concept is the lack of autonomy. I didn't choose to get on the school bus. I didn't choose to do any of this. I'm being told go to class. I'm being told, being punished if I don't go to class. And so, that feeling of not only is all this stuff happening that I don't understand, but I got no control over nothing. Will really grind it down in a hurry.
What people don't realize is we have no control of the stimulation that comes. We
Yeah.
only control we have is we can find a way out. That's
Right.
it.
That
If you're
if we're
young,
allowed to do that. But
yeah, if
like
you're
in a
younger,
school setting,
yeah,
they kind of frown on you walking out the door and going home.
yeah. I mean, if you're younger nowadays, you have coping tools.
Yeah.
Back in the day, we didn't have such a
No,
thing.
no. We were just the weird kids. Grow up, deal
Yeah.
with it, get used to it.
And I mean, we suffered,
Yeah.
but we got through it
Yeah.
and we were better for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got picked on. Yeah, we got teased, but we were better for it because in the long run, we managed to get through high school.
Yeah.
Now,
With some compassion and some skills that we
yeah,
can then turn around to people behind us and say, this way, this, here, come to me.
how was college life for you?
College life, not as bad because you introduce some of that autonomy element. I'm going to choose which class I go to. Do I want the 8 a.m. class or the 11 a.m. class? So that was good. College was less about absolute conformity than high school was. So that was good. Being the smart kid who's a little weird was more acceptable at the college level than the high school level. But even then, I could count the number of friends I had in college on one hand. Even then, didn't date a lot in college because that's a whole other level of social interaction I just never could figure out. So better, but far from ideal.
I mean, that's funny you bring up the autonomy of choosing the class.
Right.
When I went away for my master's
Mm-hmm.
across the seas to England.
Right.
And we get to choose your classes. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna choose this class. It's not at 8 in the morning. And my friend's like, no, it doesn't work like that. And finally, my classes come and I'm like, oh shit. I have a 9 o'clock class I gotta get to.
Mm-hmm.
Now it comes, I need to wake my ass up at 7, get showered, get dressed, grab a bite
Right.
to eat, get out my door,
Mm-hmm.
get to class, and now this is before we knew anything about me being fully autistic. I'm 45, I think, at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and no medication, no Adderall.
Right.
So I figure, okay, the best bet for me is to sit up front and record.
Mm-hmm.
Did that help me? No. I sat there, I recorded my classes. Did I listen to them? No.
Mm-hmm.
Did I struggle? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Because you throw on ADHD on top of that,
Yeah.
it's a whole other ball game.
Yeah. It is.
And I was overwhelmed every day until like Friday, and I would crash and I'd wake up Saturday feeling refreshed and then rinse and repeat every
Mm-hmm.
week for a
Yeah.
year.
Yeah.
I mean, college was different for both you and I guess, because we didn't have to worry about people looking at us differently.
Right.
Everyone was an adult back then,
Yeah.
and we were able to get by.
Yeah.
So, how was your college experience besides picking classes and Were
It
you able to squeak through all the classes and pass?
See, my flavor of autism came with the problem solving skills, the taking skills. You give me a standardized test on pretty much anything, and I'll pass it. It came with the better than average memory, so I can absorb enough facts to get past the test. So
I
there
envy you.
never was really an academic challenge in a sense of could I get the grade, but could I get to class and could I pay attention and could I, I also have ADHD and a half dozen other things. Could I focus and get the project done on time? And so academically, it was difficult, but not because not for the reasons most people might assume.
What? I mean, for me, it was tough.
Yeah.
I've never taken an exam. My course was online for my bachelor's, and they did everything point based.
Mm-hmm.
So I had no idea how to study.
Yeah.
And when it came time for my exams, I'm thinking, how the hell do they expect me to regurgitate everything I just learned? Because when you have ADHD, as you know, everything gets pushed.
Right.
When you learn something new, everything old gets pushed back.
Yeah.
So when it came time for me to sit down in a on-time classroom, that's another whole ball of cherries that I had to deal with because I
Mm-hmm.
have an issue. I don't know if you have this, where if you put me in an on-time classroom and I see somebody else taking a test, get up, finish it, hand it in, and leave, my mind thinks, I don't want to be the last person here. I need to rush. And I don't think, oh, he's taking another test. He's
Right.
taking another for another class.
Or
I
he
don't
just decided he didn't know any of the answers and was giving up,
yeah.
So
I don't think that I don't want to all I think is I don't want to be the last one here.
right.
So I rush through it,
Yeah.
hand it and get the hell out.
Yeah.
So and my mind still does that in college, and it's always hurt me in the end. So yeah, I struggled. Even with all the aids I had, I
Mhm.
really struggled.
Yeah.
I walked away with a postgraduate certificate instead of a master's, but it's still the same thing in my eyes.
Right. And still an accomplishment. No, and not something to be ashamed of, I mean, so
How was college life for you? I know for me, I managed to join a society and make friends. Were you able to make any friends?
uh my older brother was in college the same time I was. And so he had a pretty active group of people he'd hang out with, and I go hang out with them. So, and I had one guy that I'd gone to high school with, went to the same college that I was at. So I would hang out with him. But if you took away those, sort of pre-built groups, um, no, I didn't make a lot of friends. I didn't have the skills to know how. Talking with people, never ended well. People end up making fun of you or saying rude things about you or whatever. So why would I seek that out? So uh, no, it was very lonely. College was, grad school was. Um, some well-meaning people tried to include me and stuff, but no, I was alone a lot of the time.
All right, let's go back a little and talk a little bit about yourself.
Mhm.
What kind of traits do you have? I mean, do you have, what kind of sensory issues do you deal with?
Um, Auditory is probably my biggest one. If I'm in a room and there are a few different conversations going on at once, and it doesn't have to be very many, it doesn't have to be very loud, But if there are a few conversations going on at once, my brain is going to try to latch on to all of them and listen to everything because they're all equally important and I must know all of them. And then when it decides that it can't listen to all of them, it just says, I'm going to go get a cup of coffee. I'll be back in 15 minutes. And I can't hear anything. The sound waves still get into my brain, but I can't process any of it. That's my big auditory issue. If there's too much background noise, I can't hear you, even if you're sitting next to me. Certain high-pitched electronic noises, I just can't tune out, and they're to the point of physically painful, not because they're intense, just because they exist. They can be very quiet, but as long as it's at that magical frequency, that's a problem. Intensely bright sunlight's a problem. I wear my sunglasses a lot of the time. Just even if it's not a particularly sunny day, I tend to stay indoors, tend to keep the blinds drawn because intense light is an issue. So, I mean, there's a lot of sensory issues. I have a certain degree of face blindness. Difficult for me to recognize people that even if I've met them before and know them well, if I'm in a stressful moment, then they're a complete stranger. And I just literally have no concept. I walked right past my sister because I didn't know her. She was a stranger in that moment, so there is a lot of stuff that goes on. And, I typically, when I'm talking about autism, I'm not that open and transparent about it just because I don't want to spend, if I've got 20 minutes to talk, I don't want to spend 20 minutes talking about face blindness. I want to, here's the big point for me. But people always want to say, oh, but what if you were, you passed this person? No, but all those issues are there. I'm not, ashamed of them, but it's not something that I talk about a lot because they're bigger fish to fry. That sense of isolation that we talked about is what I'm more focused on.
And finally, where can people find out more about you and get a hold of you on the web?
My own personal site is planetautism.net. Very important, planetautism.net, not .com. Somebody else owns .com. It's full of spyware and pornography and illegal gambling, and just don't go there. But planetautism.net is my personal site. I also have a Substack under the name planetautism.net. Fairly active on LinkedIn. I'm in the midst of a meeting tomorrow, in fact, with someone who's going to help me revamp and upgrade my website and get it a little more functional and usable. So if you go there and there are some broken links, come back tomorrow. We'll get those sorted out.
And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Reed Miles, and that's David Gunter. And I'll see you in the next one. Thank you, David.
Oh, thank you. This has been great.